Before there was Conan, there was Kull. Kull is a barbarian king created by Robert E. Howard. And Robert E. Howard took an unpublished Kull story called By This Axe I Roll and reworked it into the first Conan story, The Phoenix on the Sword. But Kull is a very important character all by himself, even without that Conan connection. A previously published Kull story called The Shadow Kingdom is widely considered to be the beginning of sword and sorcery as a genre, so a very historically important character. And he's also a very distinct character from Conan because he's more philosophical. He's a thinking man's barbarian. And he's set in an age before Conan, back when there were still pre-human races like the serpent men and primordial evils that were still around and still threatened to take the world back from the rule of man. And so at times, Kull's stories feel bigger and more cosmic, and I think they're absolutely required reading for anyone who's a fan of sword and sorcery. And so what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to go through all the Kull comics that I am aware of that have come out in the last 54 years and how you can read them. And by the way, everything I'm going to mention here is going to be listed in the description below. And this is just the stuff I know about. So if I miss anything, also let me know in the comments below. And so collecting Kull is very different from collecting Conan, right? With Conan, he's got probably 800 comics or more if you're counting all the comics and magazines and graphic novels that have been put out of him over the years. And so with Conan, you can never get them all, or at least most of us can't, right? We're always going to be discovering new Conan comics, new Conan stories, and I love that about Conan. But there is something really cool about the fact that Robert E. Howard's other characters, you can actually own every single story of them, or at least have read them. And I think that's really cool in and of itself. And so collecting Kull stuff is so much easier than Conan if you're looking to read everything. So for instance, Robert E. Howard actually didn't write that many Kull stories, so they're all collected in a single volume. This is a version of that collected edition from the 90s. And Kull had one movie, which I will be reviewing at some point in the next few weeks. Now, of course, the comics that have been put out of Kull are much more extensive, but they are manageable if you're looking to track them all down and read them. Now, in this video, we're going to be focusing on how to get them physically in print, because as of right now, there is no digital way to read them. Maybe they'll be rectified at some point in the future. But for this video, we're going to go through the print editions of Kull comics, and we're going to give you two ways to collect them, either the easy way or the hard way. And so the easy way is through collections. And this originally came to us from Dark Horse Comics, who collected nearly 3 decades worth of Marvel comics of the Robert E. Howard characters. Now, their collections of the color comics look like this. This is an example of one of their Conan collections. And so the Kull collections for the color comics look just like this, except they have Kull in them. And there are 5 volumes of that for the color comics. For the black and white magazine comics that were published, like Savage Sword and stuff like that, there are 2 volumes collecting it, and they are nice and thick, but this is 2 volumes to get the black and white, 5 volumes for the color, and you've got all the collections for the Marvel comics. Dark Horse also published original comics of Kull, and those are collected in 3 trade paperbacks. Volume 1 is The Shadow Kingdom, Volume 2 is The Hate Witch, and Volume 3 is The Cat in the Skull. Now, one thing to consider with the collections is that Marvel did reprint the collections as hardcover omnibuses of all of the Marvel years of Kull, and so this was done in 3 omnibuses. The first one is Kull the Savage, which reprints all of the black and white comics. The second volume is Kull the Destroyer, which reprints the first half of the color comics. And the last volume is Kull the Conqueror, which reprints the last half of the color comics. Now, if you look at the descriptions on the omnibuses, you'll see that it has material from more issues than the Dark Horse collections. However, most of that extra material are additional pinups, which are great to have, but not necessarily vital for everyone. However, that second volume, Kull the Destroyer, does have additional stories that are not in the Dark Horse collections. And those are the Kull graphic novel, Vale of Shadow, and also 2 issues of Marvel Team Up. And so that is definitely something to consider, but we'll talk about getting those individual issues in a few minutes. Another caveat for the collections is that there are stories that exist in both the black and white and color collections because they were originally printed in the color comics and then reprinted in the black and white magazines. And so I don't think that this is a detractor because no matter what collection you're getting, there are more than enough unique stories in each volume to make it worth your time and money. And also, I think it's kind of cool to see the different ways that they were printed. You know, does color or black and white look better? And the different contexts in which they were printed, because each volume prints the stories in the order that they came out in. And so it's kind of interesting to see the different contexts. And sometimes there are some nice bonuses too. So for instance, this is the black and white version of the first Kull Comics story, which was an adaptation of the Skull of Silence. And it comes with this unused cover that was originally supposed to be for the first appearance of Kull. Originally, it was going to be in a Marvel title called Tower of Shadows, but the title of the comic changed and they decided not to use this cover, so it's really cool to see what could have been. And so whether you are going with the omnibuses or the collections, I have shown you how to get just about every Kull story that has been published in the last 54 years. However, there are some odds and ends that were not collected, and we'll talk about that as we move on to the hard way. And so the hard way to get all these stories is, of course, getting the individual issues. This is going to be for the color appearances. I'm just going to stand by my recommendation of getting the collections for the black and white because it's just so much easier than trying to hunt down the magazines, which can be quite expensive. And so let's start with a little bit of trivia. What was the first comic book appearance of Kull? Well, you can't go back any further than Conan #1. And so the first cameo of Kull was this one panel appearance as a wizard was looking through time through different eras of history. Now, if you're like me and you're not old enough or rich enough to own Conan #1, but you would like to read that story, it is available in numerous collections. The issue was also reprinted in Conan Classic back in the 90s, and it was also reprinted as a facsimile edition a couple years ago. As far as the first full appearance of Kull, that was supposed to be in a comic called Tower of Shadow, as I said previously, but they changed the name, and so it ended up being in Creatures on the Loose issue 10. This is the first full appearance of Kull. So half of the issue is the original color version of Skull of Silence, and the last half of the issue is a reprint of a story about a possessed steam shovel that tries to take over the world because comics. And so this came out in 1970, which is the same year that Conan came out. And then in 71, Kull got his own series. And so this ran for 29 issues. This is originally called Kull the Conqueror. On issue 11, it's renamed Kull the Destroyer, but as far as your collecting it goes, it really doesn't matter. Most retailers are going to just label this as Kull the Conqueror or just Kull. It's all the same series. It ran 29 issues. Worth noting is that there is a story in Monsters on the Prowl that takes place between the second and third issue of the Kull ongoing series. This is a story that was later reprinted in the black and white magazines. So if you're getting the black and white collections, you'll also get this story. And by the way, Monsters on the Prowl has the first appearance of Thulsa Doom disguised as a human. But of course, the villainous wizard appears in all of his skull-faced glory in Kull #3. I haven't read all the issues of the 70s series, but from what I've read, it starts out really strong with a combination of adaptations and original stories. And then by issue 12, it goes in its own direction of completely new stories in which Kull is overthrown by his archenemy Thulsa Doom, who takes over his kingdom, and Kull has to go on this epic quest to reclaim his throne that lasts the rest of the series. The later issues definitely get into higher fantasy sort of creatures and places than I would normally see in a Robert E. Howard related story. And I think have some mixed results as far as the storytelling goes, but there's some really cool looking monsters and some really interesting things that happen. For instance, this is a cover from one of those later issues, and I've got Kull fighting a skeleton encased in crystals in the pits of hell with a fiery tiger totem behind him. This is a heavy metal cover waiting to happen. And of course, long epics are good, but how would you guys like some really good self-contained Kull issues? Well, the 1980s has you covered. This is a 2-issue series that came out in 1982. This is Kull #1 and Kull #2. And these have a $1.25 cover price for double-sized issues. And the neat thing is a lot of these 80s comics had wraparound covers. And so that's really cool. And this first one is done by none other than Joe Jusko. So in 1982, there was a second Kull #1. This one has a $2 cover price. We're still doing double-sized issues. Still got these gorgeous wraparound covers. This one's by John Bolton, and this is for an ongoing series that lasted 10 issues. Incidentally, my favorite Kull story is issue 2 of this series. Again, $2 cover price, John Bolton Werewolf wraparound cover. It is amazing. I love this story to death. To me, this 10-issue run is the best color comics that Marvel put out at Kull, and it wraps with this wonderful 2-parter with these really cool Barry Windsor Smith covers. Also in the 80s, this beautiful oversized graphic novel of Kull called The Vale of Shadow was put out, and it is gorgeous. It is collected in the omnibus, and it is reprinted in Robert E. Howard's Savage Sword by Dark Horse, which we'll talk about in a minute. But man, for my money, it's worth it just to get it in this format at this size. Also in the 80s, there's Marvel Team Up 111 and 112. And so 111 has Spider-Man and the Defenders fighting the Snake Men, and it has a cameo of Kull. And in issue 112, Spider-Man does team up with Kull. He goes back in time in his astral form, and he's invisible, but he can possess people. And it's a very strange, wonderfully done crossover. It works, guys. This is, again, Marvel Team Up 112. And both of those issues of Marvel Team Up are in the omnibus. And so those are all the Kull comics with him as the title character. But as far as Conan appearances go, he did appear in a backup story adapting The King and the Oak in Conan #10. This was also printed in black and white, so it is in the black and white collections. It's also included in the color collections as well. Conan Annual 3 actually has a color printing of The Beast from the Abyss. This was originally a black and white story, and so this is in both color and black and white collections. Conan 25 involves the Mirrors of Tuzan-Thune, and it contains a 2-page adaptation of that Robert E. Howard Kull story. And in Conan 68 actually has King Kull and Conan meeting and going at it, and this is collected in the color collections. So let's go over some odds and ends from the 80s that are not in the Kull collections. Conan 52 adapts The Altar and the Scorpion and has a 1-panel cameo of Kull. Conan Annual 8 has an original story where Kull appears in the prologue. And then there's the graphic novel Conan the Reavers Out of Time, and this prominently features both Conan and Kull and also has Red Sonja in it. And in the 80s, Blackthrorne did 2 issues of Kull 3D. This is the first issue's cover. And here's the cover for the second issue. And don't judge them by the covers. I know Blackthrorne covers can be kind of weird. The artwork on the interior is very professionally done. It is in 3D, and to get the full effect, you do need old school 3D glasses. All right, let's move into the 21st century with Dark Horse Kull Comics. And so their first miniseries was simply called Kull, and this is a 6-issue miniseries. After that, David Lapham, who is best known for Stray Bullets, took over writing Kull and did some of the best Kull stories I've ever read, starting with Kull the Hate Witch, and that's a 4-issue miniseries. And that was followed by a 4-issue miniseries adapting The Cat and the Skull. And unfortunately, that is it for Dark Horse's Kull miniseries. So for odds and ends, we have a 2-issue miniseries adapting Kings of the Night, a Robert E. Howard story where King Kull travels through time to meet Bran McMorn. And this is a new adaptation of that story. And there is a Marvel Comics adaptation that's in black and white, and that would be included in the black and white collections. You're going to also want to pick up Robert E. Howard's Savage Sword, issues 3 and 4. Sometimes this is just called Savage Sword, but in 3 and 4, there is a 2-part Brule the Spear Slayer story, and of course, Brule is Kull's right-hand man. There's also a reprinting of the Vale of Shadow graphic novel in issues 3 and 4, and issue 10 has a color printing of the black and white story, Demon in Silvered Glass. And so that might be something you might want to pick up as well. And so now, sadly, we must leave Dark Horse and go to IDW for 2017's Kull Eternal. This is a series that lasted 3 issues. It was never completed, and I do have mixed feelings about the execution here, but I will say it was an interesting idea. It was an adaptation of Robert E. Howard's The Mirrors of Tuzan Thune. And instead of simply seeing into different times when Kull looked into the mirrors, he actually travels in time. That's the thing about Kull stories. Even when they're not great, they're still interesting and worth picking up. In recent years, Marvel reacquired the license to Conan, and so Kull did have a cameo in the last issue of Conan Serpent War. It was an epilogue that was supposed to set something up that was never followed up on because Marvel did lose the license. And as of the recording of this video, Kull is currently appearing in Titan Comics' Conan the Barbarian. He is in issues 9 through 12 of that series, teaming up with Conan in the Thurian Age. And just as a weird side note, there are Thulsa Doom comics. Now, this is not the same Thulsa Doom that's in the Kull comics. This is the Thulsa Doom from the Conan movies. This is young Thulsa Doom in Atlantis, and it's a 4-issue miniseries with gorgeous Alex Ross covers. And this was followed up with another 4-issue miniseries called Red Sonja versus Thulsa Doom, and a third miniseries called Red Sonja Doom of the Gods. All of that is from Dynamite. And that last miniseries also had 4 issues. And so there you go, 54 years of Kull, or at least all the stuff I'm aware of. I'm sure I'm missing a few things here and there. Let me know in the comments below what I've left out. But man, I think it's so awesome that it is easy to get all of this stuff. Even if you're collecting individual issues, you may be thinking to yourself, but Todd, some of this stuff is from the 1970s. It's actually not that expensive. So for instance, this is the first appearance of Kull. Now, if this was a high grade version of that, it might go for maybe $50 to $70, but this is like a very good copy of it. It has a presentable cover, infinitely readable, $15. First appearance of a major character. And I would say if you got every single thing I'm talking about, I mean, don't buy it all at once, right? You know, get it over your lifetime. you're talking maybe $200 to $400. And that's really affordable for an entire run of a character. Just to contrast that, this is the first appearance of Harley Quinn. This comic in good condition will go for somewhere between $400 and $700 by itself. So to be able to get all the appearances of a character like Kull for less than $400 is really awesome. And I hope everyone does that because I think Kull comics are really, really worth reading. All right, that's it. Like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.